So we began working on this in 2020, and we got pretty far in the process until the COVID-19 pandemic began, and we started over in 2021. Essentially, what became Senate Bill 511 is a harm reduction program for the state of Oklahoma. So that means tribal governments, nonprofit entities, and other organizations to create this program to connect people who are drug addicted with mental health, substance abuse services, and try to become less addicted to drugs, and also offer clean needles. This is based on a bill that was passed in multiple states across the country, both Democratic and Republican. And what was interesting was that I filed a bill, as did the Senate author, as did a couple other folks on the other side of the aisle. And we were like, well, I mean, instead of having multiple bills, let's consolidate and have one piece of legislation. Let's all work together, Democrat, Republican, House, and Senate. And it took over 2 years, and there were a multitude of different partners and stakeholders involved. But we were very happy that the governor signed this into law, and it's literally saved thousands of lives during the past year. And I'm really encouraged that this is an example of how both parties can come together on common sense solutions and move the ball forward.
One of the beautiful things about working on this substantial piece of legislation was really knowing that there was a level of trust. Representative Pay and I had worked on lots of other areas of legislation, and so there was that relationship to know that if we were going to work together and collaborate on one specific piece of legislation, that I could trust that we were going to go for the big fish, that we weren't going to water it down, we weren't going to minimize the issue, but we were going to tackle it head on. And so by having that relationship that we had built through our service, our years of service, it really allowed us to kind of lean in and trust that he was going to work on his side of the chamber and make sure that the House really had a thorough understanding of the bill, and that myself and my other Senate co-authors were going to do our work on the Senate side to bring those votes to the table.
So if you look at the co-authors, you had MAP Future Caucus members. So in the House, there was myself, Representative Carol Bush, and Representative John Waldron. On the Senate side, it was Senator Kerry Hicks and Senator John Michael Montgomery. Republicans, Democrats from the Lawton, Oklahoma City, Tulsa areas, so suburban, urban, rural, all that was represented. So that was really cool to see in terms of the coalition that we built. And I think it's an example of where, as millennial young legislators, we care about good policy. We care at the end of the day about what's going to help our fellow Oklahomans, particularly those who are struggling when it comes to drug addiction. And you look at the bill having passed post-pandemic. I think experiencing that as a country highlighted the mental health crisis we face as a state. And I believe it lended more of a reason to justify the bill to our colleagues, and that's what ultimately I think helped get it passed.
And MAP's Future Caucus really provided the space, the platform, if you will, to be able to have those meaningful connections. Our monthly meetings are every other week. Getting together for lunch and kind of discussing where's it at in the process. What are you hearing? What do we need to be doing from our angle? Because a lot of the politics that people get really frustrated with. It's timely, and so making sure that we had open lines of communication, and again that trust and that relationship to know that it was still moving through the process was really, really instrumental in helping us get that across the finish line.
If you look at the history of America, it's because of bold, decisive decisions that has moved this country forward. And for me, it always comes down to voting my conscience, regardless of the political consequences. I don't believe you should be obsessed with getting power and getting reelected. There's more to this position than that. And you should not be afraid of how people think of you or what the perception is of your bills. It's about doing the right thing. And going back to the harm reduction bill, and we got a lot of accusation for certain folks that we were trying to, let free rein on needles all across the state and not doing anything about it. But the fact of the matter is we have a high epidemic of infectious disease, HIV and hepatitis C. We have law enforcement who, 1 in 3 law enforcement officers will experience a needle-related injury during their careers, and that's how we're able to get their support and endorsement for the bill. And so if you tell the story correctly, if you present the facts and the powerful argument for whatever you're trying to do, everything else will work out. And you don't lose your elections based on how you vote on one bill or if you carry a certain bill or anything like that. It's about how you connect with your constituency and do they feel that they can trust you. And right now, I think the American public is fed up with the partisanship and extremism that we're experiencing, and they want something different. They want to see government work. They want to see their elected officials work together. And so as long as you remember that North Star, and if that's your guiding compass, it'll all work out.
Yeah, and the things that make that possible are obviously having those trusting relationships, and they don't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes years of cultivation, of talking about, hey, I have this really big, hairy, audacious goal that I'm trying to go after. Who do I need to bring into the conversation? It isn't about ego in politics, and oftentimes, I can't overstate that fact enough. Is that it can't be about ego to be successful. You really have to bring folks along in the journey, and you have to bring allies and build coalitions and partnerships so that when or if things start to kind of go askew, you can help pull it back to the right track and make sure that you can keep pushing forward. And it does take time to build those relationships, and it can't be built on, hey, I need you to do this for me. It needs to just be built on, who are you? And tell me about your journey to public service, and why are you here, and what do you want to achieve during your years of service? Because Representative Pei and I have a lot of aligned interests, and just looking at us on paper, you wouldn't see that. But knowing that we have a strong relationship and a good friendship, and we can go out for drinks or we can head for coffee, even at the end of a day that might have been particularly brutal on either side of the chamber. It's really important to know that it's not just going to be about what you did while you were in service or were in office, but it's going to be about the people that really made that lasting impression and those lasting changes for you.
At the end of the day, we're all human beings serving in these elected positions, and I think it's important for each of us to get to know each other, not as a Democrat or as a Republican, but as fellow Oklahomans, as fellow Americans. And we share similar interests outside of work. We all have family members who care about us. We all, I'm sure, are watching Yellowstone right now, for example. We all love to probably travel and have similar hobbies. And so finding those common interests, getting to know each other on a personal level, that's how you develop those long-term relationships to pass good policy.